Carbs are my emotional support, okay? We're deep diving into 1.4 straight carb lore. Disclaimers below, don't be cringe.
Sometimes in social media, carbs like bread, pasta, and flour can have a bad rap, as shown by our dear friend Barbie over there, who is definitely stressing out over her AP biology exam. Well, here's the thing. In the world of biology, we talk about carbohydrates as a major functioning macromolecule. And in this video, you're going to see how macromolecules like carbohydrates are able to provide us functionalities that we won't see anywhere else. Let's dive into macromolecules. When we're talking about macromolecules, we're talking about these major large molecules that are joined together by these specific building blocks. This is a great table so you understand the differences between the different types of macromolecules and building blocks. Unlike previous AP biology sections, the AP biology group has changed the way that they take a look at macromolecules. So instead of comparing and contrasting carbs, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids in one section, we have now separated them into separate sections. So in this video, we're focusing in on carbohydrates, where the building block is monosaccharides or simple sugars. Now, carbs get a bad rap because while they do provide energy and they store energy and they build macromolecules, the problem is they're the first go-to when it comes to providing energy. So they are used instead of the other macromolecules, proteins, and fats. This is why you see in the media that carbs often get a bad rap, just like our friend Barbie, who has given it a bad rap as well. Now, if you want more details about macromolecules, these are what we're going to review. The thing is, when we're talking about our macromolecules, remember, in previous videos, we indicated the three main elements, which are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which make up carbohydrates. These bonds or structures of monosaccharides build up what are called disaccharides, which eventually build up polysaccharides, which we will review in just a second. They're built by what's called a linkage bond, which once again we'll review in just a second. But this is a great table to compare and contrast the different types of macromolecules, linkage bonds, types, functions, and examples.
Carbs are my emotional support, okay?
When Barbie was eating her bread, she wasn't really focusing in on carbohydrates as a structure. The thing is, carbohydrates have three simple elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And this circular structure and this linear structure are both hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. So that must mean that they're carbohydrates because even though one is circular and one is linear, they are composed of the three elements with the same fundamental ratio, 1 to 2 to 1. So for example, if I count up the carbons here, you're going to see that there's 6 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which means that there has to be 12 hydrogens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, for the circular structure, you might be thinking, wait a minute, there's only a couple of carbons here. The little bends over here indicate a carbon. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have 5, and then you have 6. So those are the 6 carbons. And then if you were to count up the hydrogens, they'll end up becoming 12. And then oxygens, it's going to be 6. So we see usually when we're talking about the most simple carbohydrates, the 6, 12, 6, or the 1 to 2 to 1 ratio, it could triple as well. So you could change this number to 12, and then this would have to change respectively, and then oxygen would have to change as well. So just be aware of that, and you'll notice that there's no other additional elements in here. There's no phosphorus, there's no sulfur, and that's one way that you can distinguish carbohydrates from the other monosaccharide, the other macromolecules that are here. So if you look back at the table, you could see there are phosphorus in the other monosaccharides. So proteins, for example, which we're going to talk about in a later video, indicates that they have N in there, while lipids have P in there. So that's how you can distinguish carbohydrates, because they only have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in their structure. Now let's talk about the different types. So when we're talking about the different types, we have monomers. Monomers meaning mono meaning one, so it has one single unit, one sugar unit, and there's no attachment anywhere outside, no linkage. An example of this is glucose. You can think of glucose, fructose, and galactose. If you are given a free response question or a multiple choice question and you're unsure if it is a carbohydrate, take a look at the ending, OSE. OSC indicates that it is some sort of carbohydrate. So always just double check. That's not always the case. For example, if you take a look at the term starch or glycogen, these are polysaccharides, which we're going to talk about in just a second, but they don't have the OSE ending. So we can't really say that all the time, but if you do see a word and it does end in OSE, that's your hint that that is going to be a carbohydrate. Okay, so now let's talk about disaccharides. You can see the term di here, which means two sugar units. So when we talk about the term disaccharides, we're talking about the sucrose and the lactose and maltose, where oftentimes you can see two monomers that are joined together by what's called a glycosidic bond or glycosidic linkage, which is basically this bondage that's formed between the two monomers to form that disaccharide. Now, if we take a look at many sugar units, you have a term called polysaccharides, poly meaning many. So poly, the root word means many, and it's long chains of monosaccharides that are built together with those glycosidic linkage. You are expected to know the different types of polysaccharides. So if you take a look at starch, for example, that does contain energy storage, but that's for plants. If you were to look at glycogen, that also is energy storage, but that is for animals here. And if you were to look at cellulose you're going to talk about more in Unit 2 when you're talking about this idea of the structure of the cell, and you can see the root word cell. Well, cellulose is the structural component in plant cells. So the term carbohydrates doesn't just mean energy storage, it also could be structural storage. And when we talk about this word chitin or chintin, I'm not really sure as to the proper way to pronounce it, but it is a type of arthropod that has a hardened exoskeleton that this is a structural component for. It's also in fungus as well, fungi cell wall. So you'll notice that in there. So that's a unique type of polysaccharide. Now, if you want to focus on understanding monosaccharides as compared to other macromolecules, remember that the monomer is monosaccharide. Examples include things like glucose, fructose, and galactose. The ratio or the general formula is C6H12O6. You can take a look at the structure of glucose, fructose, and galactose and notice the similarities of the ending of the OSE. Remember, monosaccharides make up disaccharides, disaccharides make up polysaccharides. One to two to many, and you can notice the ending onosaccharides in all of these words of the different types of polymer types. Now, you'll see here the different types of polysaccharides or monosaccharides, and you can see the terms and what they do in this summary table below. So that should be helpful for you to understand the terms. So let's try to tackle this following quiz question. Take a moment and pause your computer screen or your tablet so you can review the following question and we'll review it together. Okay, let's see if you understood the structural differences between monosaccharides and polysaccharides. So what is the correct answer? The correct answer is C. And the reason why it is C is because when we talk about monosaccharides, remember, we talk about the term mono, and if we talk about polysaccharides, we're talking about poly. Both of these end in O saccharides. So these are terms that are specific for carbohydrates. So the key elements that you're going to see are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So you're not going to see any nitrogen in both of these. So A is incorrect. Glycerol and fatty acids is another type of macromolecule, which we'll dive into later. So it's not quality of monosaccharides or polysaccharides. Monosaccharides are building blocks or single sugar units, while polysaccharides are long chains. That would be the best answer. And then monosaccharides are linear. Remember, that is not always the case. If we remember the structure that we showed, there was one that was a ring structure. I'm not doing a great picture of it, but there was one that was a ring structure versus a linear structure. So monosaccharides are not always linear. And polysaccharides can be several monosaccharides together. They don't have to be circular per se.
Carbohydrates are therapy.
Appreciate you riding along for our cosmic journey. If today's mission brought you the knowledge that slaps, make sure to hit that like button to boost that signal. Subscribe if you're locked in for our next launch. And don't miss the link tree. It's got all the goods for AP Bio, PSAT Math, and FSAT Math. Before I sign out, make sure you're all in one orbit and diving in. Killing out. Till next time.